Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. So a little while ago I got this amazing musical instrument. This is sort of a Chinese harp. It's called the Konghou. And if you want to see my unboxing video of that, I will put a link for that down in the description. But today I want to talk kind of about how this harp works. Because it is a harp, but also it has some pretty major differences from standard Western lever harps that are really interesting and awesome. So I kind of want to show those to you, and you can see what you think. Okay, so I'm going to make this video talking about the Konghou and Konghou constructions, but I want to make it super clear that I am a newbie to this, first of all, and second of all, I am very much an outsider to this culture. I don't have any connections to Chinese culture other than the fact that I think their music is breathtakingly beautiful and their instruments are amazing, and I just really want to learn more about it. So I'm going to give you my perspective and things that I have noticed and things that I think are interesting, but it's absolutely no substitute for learning about the Konghou from a person either of Chinese descent or who works with the Konghou. Yeah, I just want to be really clear about that, because I'm probably going to say some things that are not entirely correct, and I'm probably going to miss some things that are really important that I don't even know about. So I just wanted to be really clear about that. And if you are interested more in the Konghou, please do seek out Chinese sources. Okay, so first I'm going to kind of give you some basic similarities, because I mean it is a harp. It's pretty similar in a lot of ways. It's 22 strings. It goes from a low G. It's actually 23 strings. Sorry, it goes from a low G up to a high A. And an interesting difference, but this is also echoed in some Western harps, it is double strung. So it has two courses of strings. There's one on this side and there's one on this side. So it does actually end up having 46 strings, which is a lot. And it is tuned to a standard Western scale. You can tune it using any tuner. You tune it just, I tune mine in the key of E flat, so I can put some levers up and it's in the key of C. So that's very standard and normal. The string colors are very similar. All your C's are red, just like a regular harp. F's are green, which is kind of cool. But not that different, because of course on a standard folk harp, the F's are blue, so quite similar. Another similarity is the levers. They work very similar to how levers on a Western folk harp work. They're actually extremely similar to the Rees levers. So you lift this bit up and it connects the string a little bit down the way, and that raises it half step. Super simple. But there's also some really neat differences with the levers. And I'm going to show you a picture of the back of this harp, because I think that's the best way to explain it. On a typical Western double-strung harp, you have two sets of levers, one on either side of the harp, which can be nice because you can play it in like you can arrange it so that you're playing in sort of two different keys almost, or if you have an accidental, you can set it on one side and not the other, so you don't have to worry about lever flipping during the piece. However, it does create the complication of most lever flips tend to happen in the melody, so they would be on the right side of the harp, but that is exactly the side of the harp that you can't see when you're playing. So on a Western double-strung harp, that can be quite tricky. There are some tricks so you can feel the lever, but it's just not as easy as seeing the lever, flipping it. But this Konghou has an absolutely ingenious method, and I'm not sure if this is standard for all lever Konghous, but this one in particular has a standard, or it has this ingenious method. When I flip this lever on the E string, it changes this one, so it's tuned to E flat, so it changes it to E when I put that lever up. But also, through this little mechanism that goes through the neck of the harp. And I'm going to show you a picture of this. There's a little piece on the other side that gets pulled in. So flipping this lever actually changes the strings on both sides. So here's my E flat, and I'm going to flip that lever so it's an E. And on the other side, it's also an E now. I just thought that was the most ingenious invention, and honestly, I just want to buy a bunch of these levers and put them on my double-strung harps, because so much easier than having to feel for the lever and flip it as you're playing. There are some Western harps that make use of this technique, these vertical soundboards, and I believe that that idea was borrowed from the Konghou. You can get a double-strung harp from Marini-made harps that is vertical like this, so it's very thin. Hayden Harps makes a carbon fiber harp with a vertical soundboard like this. And the advantage in that is that it's way more transportable because it's way thinner and tiny. It's almost thinner than my harpsichle. But you get a way fuller sound because you're resonating along this whole soundboard. This has got to be more than a foot across, so it's got a bigger soundboard than, it's probably about the same size as my Ravenna 34 down in the bass. So the sound just blooms out of it, even though it's tiny, which is really cool. Okay, so the last difference in construction, as far as outside the harp, I don't know much about inside the harp construction, but as far as outside the harp, and I'm going to take a picture of these two so you can have a close-up. There are little string anchors all along the bottom here, and they're all along the bottom at the very bottom as well, but it's just these ones on the sides that have this particular ability, which is so cool. So these string anchors, your string comes down, and they're anchored right here on a little pin, just like they would be if you were having a regular lyre. Like if you picture a lyre in your head, the string runs down, it goes onto the little peg at the bottom. That's how it works. But these are not just little pegs. This is the coolest part to me. They're amazing. So these little things that look like pegs, inside, they're almost like there's a little piece of wood on a sort of seesaw-like contraption, and there's two pegs on either side. And on the other side, the same note, so if we imagine this E we were talking about earlier, this E, it runs down to its little peg, and then on the other side, the E in the same octave is connected to that E on this side. Which does make tuning a little difficult sometimes. You kind of have to adjust both sides a couple times. However, it means you can do awesome things like this. I can pluck this E on this side, and this very characteristic sound for Eastern music, if I sort of wiggle this string, I get this awesome vibrato sound. So here we go. It's so cool. And not only can you do the vibrato, but you can do like straight note bends. Like, I am not very good at it yet. I have very recently started working on this with an amazing teacher. But yeah, it's the coolest thing. And what makes this possible are those little holes over here where the pegs go, and then those little seesaw mechanisms that when you pull on one side of the string, it tightens the same string on the other side, and you can do so cool things with it. One difference, which I forgot to mention, and I don't know that I would necessarily call it a difference of construction, which is maybe why I haven't mentioned it before. One other difference is the strings. So on a Western harp, you will typically have either nylon strings, which is pretty standard. Most people play on nylon strung harps. You can have gut strings, and those are very standard for pedal harps or harps that are like preparing you for pedal harp. They sound really warm, they're pretty. Or you have wire strung harps, and those are way less common, but they are appreciated by a select few group of people. And they do sound really cool. I have a wire strung harp that I very much enjoy. But those are the three basic ones. There's also a couple synthetic materials that are meant to like emulate nylon or gut, but basically they're just trying to be nylon or gut, so I don't feel like they fall into totally their own category. But the Konghou has its completely own category of strings. They are silk wrapped with steel. So it's really just the most amazing thing. They still have sort of this wire sound to them. Like it's a sharper, more immediate sound, and it really hangs on for a while. Very beautiful. But the core is silk, so it doesn't sound exactly like a wire-strung harp, and it's not as hard on your fingers. It's still pretty easy for me to play with my finger pads. The only trouble I've been having is I'm working on harmonics, which are pretty easy for me on a nylon-strung folk harp, but it's been a little rough on my knuckle on these strings, but I'm sure I'm going to get used to it. Okay, so now that we've gone through differences in construction, I wanted to talk a little bit about differences in playing style. And I think it's so interesting to me. I just love the music of other cultures. It's so fascinating. It seems to me in the Western world, we treat our harps in like this very precious way. Like they're angelic instruments. That's how we think of them. And it's such a traditional instrument. There haven't really been a whole lot of innovations made. And when people do make innovations, it seems like a lot of the community is sort of hesitant to embrace that change. It's such a traditional, and it's treated very traditionally. I've heard harpists being upset over some harpists using like a little hand percussion on the soundboard. Like they don't like that. And to me, I'm not a traditional person. To me, make what sounds you're gonna make because it's cool. So I've always thought that was a little silly of harp culture, if you will. That some harpists are just kind of like that. But in my experience, as I've been talking with my teacher and watching a whole ton of Konghou players on YouTube, and again, I want to be very clear that this is just my experience as a person outside the culture. If you want to know the absolute for real truth, please go talk to an actual Konghou player from China or of Chinese descent, because they will know way better than I do. But from what I've seen, it seems like Konghou players are way less precious about their instruments. Not that they don't treat them nicely, because they absolutely do, obviously. But just the sort of techniques that they're willing to utilize. Like one thing my teacher taught me was to just go down here below the bridges, and you can just make a cool sound effect like, or which is really fun, aren't you? And she was showing me all these things. On her Konghou, there's like this little guardrail here to protect these bridges that come out. And she was doing all kinds of percussion on there. And she's like, you can tap with your nails a little bit if you're gentle. And it was just like, it was the neatest thing to see somebody just be excited about using their instrument for all the cool sounds it can make, and not just the very traditional specific way of playing it. Another way this manifests is when my teacher was teaching me, she was talking about how you can play on different parts of the strings in order to get sort of a different timbre of sound. So she's like, if you want it to sound really plucky, you can play real down low here, and you can almost pick them with your nails. So. Okay, and then you can play way up here, and that has a way different sound. And it's just so cool to experiment with that and to be willing to try those different things. The whole lesson, she was like, no, try it lower, try it higher, see how it sounds. And I just have never had that experience with a Western harp or Western harp teacher. So I thought that was really cool. Another really cool technique that some Konghou players use, and I'm not going to show you this because I'm 0% mastered it. But you can take a pick and use the pick on the string to really fast, and it makes this like really cool fast vibrato sound, and it's really cool and it sounds amazing, and it's just another one of those neat like almost sound effect rather than a specific musical line. One other difference in the construction of the harp is these bridges down here. And this is really interesting. This is, and I'm going to get into this more when I talk about the history of the Konghou in a future video. But these bridges are sort of carryover from the guzheng. I'm saying that so wrong. I'm so sorry. I forgot to look that up beforehand. But they're sort of a carryover from this other Chinese instrument, which is sort of like a flat table harp, like a zither. But they have these cool movable bridges, so you can change the tuning pretty much anytime you want to, and also it makes that pitch bending a little bit easier. So that's what these are. These are each one individual piece of wood placed under the strings, and they are movable. I should also mention that this is actually a very unique Konghou in that very few of them are made this small with this range. A lap Konghou is not really as much of a thing the way that we have Western lap harps. So yeah, even my teacher was kind of baffled by it. I think it's kind of fun and I really enjoy it, but real Konghous are usually at least 36 strings on one side. My teacher even says, like, but the bass is the best part. So if you are interested in playing actual traditional Chinese music, you might want to look into getting a bigger one than this one. I think I will in the future. This one is suiting my needs for now, but I think in the future I'm going to want a bigger one. So that is all that I have for you today. Thank you all so much for watching. If you have any questions, please do feel free to ask them in the comments, because I would love to get back to you and talk with you about this awesome instrument. Thank you all so much for your support. I hope you have an absolutely wonderful day. Thank you all so much for watching. If you would like to subscribe to my channel, go ahead and click on that subscription button right up there. Otherwise, if you would like to join my Patreon or buy me a coffee, the links to those are down in the description. I hope you have an absolutely wonderful day.